Thank you, Anjali, for that compelling presentation. Next, please welcome Cyril, SVP and CTO of Rockwell Automation, and Rob, VP of Business Process and Corporate Technology at ProMach, for their talk on industrial AI, the critical role of collaboration to scale. Cyril is the architect of Rockwell's automation to autonomy vision after 25 years at Schneider Electric, while Rob brings operational excellence expertise from Rev Group, Johnson Controls, and GE Transportation. So please give them a round of applause.
How many of you have heard of ProMach? You two don't count. Okay, not many. I didn't either about 3 years ago when I was interviewing with them. Let me add some color to who ProMach is. So ProMach is one of the world's largest manufacturer of innovative processing and packaging machines. So if you think about some of our big customers, it's PepsiCo, it's Coke for processing their beverages into bottles. It's Tito's. I don't know, any fans here of Tito's? Nestle, Procter & Gamble products. So if you walk into any Walmart, Costco's, or for that matter, any store, it's a strong chance that those products have been processed, packaged in one shape or form by our machines. So let me start by talking to you about how we got to this point of talking about AI at ProMach. So I'll start it off by saying that AI within ProMach did not start out with a technology push. It started with an organizational pull, which I think a lot of companies don't experience something like that. And I can tell you, long before we even created the ProMach AI program, there were teams that were out and about experimenting with it. And that in itself became a problem. So I started in April 2023 as a VP of Business Process. And as I'm traveling around the world, visiting our businesses, I kept hearing people talk about AI. And for the most part, I think if you would ask 5 people to define AI, you got different answers. And so I knew we had to get our arms around this, mainly from a security standpoint. So we did an organizational assessment just to determine, what's going on in the organization. And we found we have had some divisions that were doing some homegrown AI assistance. We had a bunch of divisions that were talking to local AI vendors. We had some folks that were really interested in and was going to start going down one of those paths. So what this created with this organizational pull is that, let me get indexed here.
Technology is on.
Okay, so what this led to is a lot of AI occurring within silos. And ProMach at that time was comprised of about 44 businesses globally. We're up to about 54 now. And by that happening, it was causing a lot of redundancies, a lot of inefficiencies, and it was difficult to even share best practices. As that's going on, we're starting to see a proliferation of AI vendors, which that in itself is going to result in cost increases for us, and also just the inability of a lot of these different software packages to interact or interface and connect with other systems. And of course, the big one, we were looking at a big risk of our data being compromised. Anytime that you introduce AI into an organization, your risk profile increases by a lot. You're taking static data and you're transferring it to dynamic data, and there has to be a program wrapped around that to control that. So what we did from this point is that became the business case for us to get moving forward. So we created the ProMach architecture for the program, and then we basically went and got started. So if I go back here, once we got started with this architecture, we determined that the best fit within ProMach was to create an AI program based on two pillars. One pillar is internal facing, which is your generative AI. So this is really geared around how do we drive efficiency within our company? How do we transfer knowledge and how do we drive knowledge gain for our employees? The second pillar, which Cyril will talk about in a few minutes, is more customer facing. It's more machine intelligence. So as we started putting this together, and by the way, it was 3 of us doing this part-time, so it was quite a feat. We ran into basically 3 big challenges, right? The first challenge is, for those of you that know anything about ProMach, is we are a decentralized company that's GM-led, and we acquire 3 to 5 companies every year. So we're never in a steady state ever. Outside of that, the organizational pull, it was difficult to keep up with it. With all the use cases coming in and just trying to keep our arms around who was doing what within the organization, mainly from a standpoint of how can we keep our information secure. So once we kind of got our arms around this, and when I say got our arms around this, what we did with the really the, you know, how do we balance control, scale, and speed within the program, and that in itself was fairly easy for us to do. We did employ a strategy of building and also buying. So we chose the building strategy simply based off of we have the ability to control and scale. And when I say the ability to control is we can build our internal custom stack around our processes versus buying, we have to build our process around the stack that we're buying. So as an example, we created our own internal web application, our platform. We called it PARIS, which is an acronym for the ProMach Artificial Intelligence Resource for Information Solutions. Not as cool as Iron Man Jarvis, but it's that was taken and PARIS is working. So we created that, and we've got today about 40 assistants and 2 agents. So that was all homegrown within ProMach. Obviously, we spent a lot of time with IT to make sure everything was safe and secure. And on the buy side, we've done a lot with Salesforce, mainly on our aftermarket side of the value stream. So Einstein, Agentforce. Anybody using Agentforce by any chance? Okay. So we wanted to be very deliberate and intentional and go through this iterative process with our approach. And our approach is really anchored to a strategy to execution, X matrix that we use that helps us keep focused, prioritized, and aligned to all those actions that we need to take to scale and do it, you know, very responsibly. With respect to our pillar, our customer-facing pillar with machines, we started working with Cyril in Rockwell Automation's digital division. We have two divisions that were interested in creating some intelligence and offering some intelligence on machines. So, you know, I'll turn it over to you and basically walk through what does that mean?
Yeah, we can do that. Just for context, I'm Cyril Perducat. I'm Rockwell Automation Chief Technology Officer. For those of you that have not heard about Rockwell, we are a leader in industrial automation, industrial software solution, and smart manufacturing consulting in general. 30,000 employees, close to $10 billion of revenue in 100 countries, and we are especially very strong in North America. So if you see in North America a process that is food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, auto, tire industry, some process industries, oil and gas, mining industries, or life science, there is a very good chance that all or some of the process of those customers use Rockwell automation technology for sensing, for control, for actuating, and also for supervision and management of manufacturing. I joined Rockwell 5 years ago, and the idea and that we had with the CEO at this time, and the reason I joined the company was to the feelings that we've reached a point in the world of manufacturing technology, probably after also a decade of everybody working on IoT, connectivity, data lake, a lot of those architecture topics that, well, yeah, we do have a lot of data. The topic of the day, I think it's data to impact. So we do have a lot of data in manufacturing. We probably have an excess of data in manufacturing. But the problem is data in manufacturing is very specific in its nature. You don't necessarily need to have 10 years of data because manufacturing 10 years ago in your plant is not relevant to your situation today. You need to have data in context. You need to understand how those different data connect to each other. In autonomous system, you have a lot of data that represents the same thing from different angles. So there is an element of data architecture that is important. So we came to this idea that the reality, the transformation that manufacturing technologies are facing is this revolution from moving from a paradigm of automation to a paradigm of autonomy, to moving from the idea that a factory today is programmed. It means that whatever you do in a factory, if you want to change something when you have some automation, you need somebody to do a bit of code somewhere. To autonomy in the sense that every component of a manufacturing process, including machines that are provided by different people and different members of an ecosystem, worked by themselves in an autonomous way. It means that they can capture information about the environment, they can adjust their parameters, they can adjust their logic, they can adjust based on whatever business scenario you want to optimize, but they do this locally on the machine, which is exactly the type of technology that ProMach needs to do to deliver the performance that is expecting, but also to deliver some contractual terms in terms of serviceability, things that happen on the life cycle of the machine. But also this machine exists in the larger system of the end user. So if you sell to PepsiCo, PepsiCo has machines from different companies that needs to create a form of collective intelligence from those machines together. So that's, we built this, but we very quickly found out that the roadblock to delivering that vision of autonomous operation is not necessarily technology. There is no technology that needs to be invented that doesn't exist today, and we have to wait for this technology to emerge from MIT, for example, to be practical. No, like vision has matured a lot, neural nets, LLMs, everything. There is a palette of technologies that is incredible. Where our customers struggle all the time is, where do I start? What's the method? And what are all the different side topics that are connected and that are critical to make this happen? You mentioned some of them. You mentioned security as one of them. Remembering the previous presentation, there is an element of trust with AI solution. You know, you trust that this information that you get is relevant. There is nothing worse than getting a wrong diagnosis that make you fear the worst, where in reality that was a mistake. So there is an element of really working with customers, and we build that process that I'm going to describe now. We acquired Calypso in 2021. Calypso was a digital transformation consulting company focused on manufacturing, created by ex-Deloitte executives, with the idea that digital transformation in manufacturing or in industry is specific and needs specific competencies. And we acquired Calypso because our customers were struggling with this change management method, connected topic things, and we, based on real use case and real experiences like the one we had with ProMach, we evolve our method and our approach, and this is what we advise to customers, is to really, in order to build that systems, that new systems that observe, infer, decide, and act, that really close the loop from capturing information, but to make something actionable with those information, with or without human in the loop, with more or less autonomy. But the process to make this happen is to really to have a very good description, a foundation of data visibility, but that takes into account ontologies, semantics, the meaning of those data, the relationship between those data, and the layers of data. You don't need millisecond sensor data at the enterprise level, but you might need millisecond sensor data to optimize the operation at a specific part of the machine. Making a diagnostic to understand what is the baseline machine behavior in that case and what is the expected machine behavior, and understand the different modes and refine this idea of data contextualization, define this idea of how does the machine learn. We are not necessarily going to run something that billion parameters large language models in every single machine, but we have to put the right level of intelligence that is fit for the use case that is necessary. Classify faults, analyze root cause so that we can understand where those humans are important to be in the loop, safety, security, all those things, versus where humans can be removed from the loop also for efficiency. Define future failures in the machine, future failures modes. This is where the ecosystem is important, because collaboration between a PepsiCo using the machine, a ProMach building the machine, a Rockwell providing the technology, help define those different predictions. The worst case for me is to try to build a very sophisticated AI-based solution that is looking for problems to happen without knowing what are those problems. And this is surprisingly what a lot of people are doing. You know, they are kind of building a technological nuke and hoping that by blowing this nuke in the middle of their factory, something good is going to happen. And I pictured it in a way so that everybody understands that nothing fundamentally good happened in that case. And then recommend the optimal action. And this is where the intersection with AI is going to be very, very interesting, because when a recommended action is identified, and I saw there was also 2 presentations ago, there was something around engineering and this idea of how do I fake determinism in a non-deterministic type of technology, which is what happened in factories on networks, for example, where you have a non-deterministic technology and you create almost deterministic behavior. So that's the same thing here. If we know what will be the recommended actions, and this is where an agentic architecture, this is when AI as an iteration of the process can come in, because now you can decide, do I pop up this request to the user to say there is a critical alert, you need to look at the machine and take a decision, because I'm not going to take that decision by myself, or I have degraded the performance of the machine because there is a critical signal coming from the motor that tells me something is going to break and somebody from maintenance needs to have a look, and all those different scenarios. And also capturing what makes performance great, feeding back that performance to ProMach engineering so that ProMach engineering can design better machines that will integrate natively some of those capabilities at the end. And at the end, create this idea of autonomy, where every single piece that you have in a factory, in fact, becomes a robot. I think there is a debate about humanoid robots, not humanoid robots. But if you take every single piece of a factory today, what they are going to become is something that sense, can infer decisions about what to do with that information based on rules, scenario, business outcomes that are expected, and a way to connect with the physical or the digital world to act. So for me, this is a robot. So what we are doing at ProMach is transforming those machines into very smart robots that can autonomously deliver the level of performance that is expected by customers. And it means that it's much more than just driving a technology equation, but it's understand all the aspects of the equation to be able to deliver that result. So that's what we have been able to do with ProMach in partnership, and that we are willing to do with a lot of our customers that are facing similar transformation and challenges.
In the process is very simplified. I think you guys make it very easy. So I was involved with the first of 3 workshops that we had in Louisiana. And it basically starts with the division basically raising their hand and saying, hey, you know, the voice of the customer says that, you know, we want to have at some level of intelligence on machine. You had mentioned condition-based monitoring. It could be predictive modeling. It could be prescriptive optimization, or we can close the loop with full autonomous machine operation. So it all depends with the VOC. In this case, I don't think they wanted to go to the autonomous level, but they were interested in condition-based monitoring and predictive, or condition-based monitoring and predictive modeling. And so we worked towards a minimal viable product at that point. And the team that you guys sent was, I mean, they were amazing. So we're still on that journey, and we started with another division. So And one thing I'd like to mention too with Rockwell, I mean, they are ProMach's largest supplier. So I mean, we're doing stuff with digital twins, with Emulant 3D. But when we were starting up the ProMach AI program, I knew that we needed a project management office for AI. There's just no way that we were going to try to manage something like this without something like that. So I remember flying down to Houston, had a couple workshops with the digital team down there, and we created this concept of a digital program office. So they basically gave us a toolbox with a bunch of tools, and that's what we use today to basically take the submitted use cases that are turned in and work through that process. Someone was talking earlier about prioritizing. How do you know which use cases to work on? These tools that we got from Rockwell just really helps us to simplify that process based on value, ease of implementation, impact, so on and so forth. So yeah, definitely look forward to continuing working with you. So I talked a little bit about where we came from. So right now, current state, I think we're at a good place. And I'm looking at Nancy and Sarah, and I say that because 3 of us were doing this part-time in a company of about 5,500 people, 54 divisions, and all 3 of us, when I say 3 of us, we have who I call the scientist in the lab. So he's one of our control engineers out in California. It's just, wow, just wicked smart, but he's the architect of Paris. And then myself, and then someone that works within my function is the lead for the digital program office. But again, we started going down this path, and I wanted to make sure that it was a very deliberate, iterative process. I know I leveraged, my connections here at MIT quite a bit to make sure we were doing the right things. Right now, I think we're at an inflection point because I just gave my first quarterly presentation to our CEO and the remainder of the C-suite, and they loved what we were doing. Matter of fact, they said, go do it more and do it faster. So we're at a point now where we're getting ready to staff up to lead the AI charge. And we know that we have the intelligence in-house. So I believe we have the people in-house to move into these positions to help us really accelerate this. As I mentioned earlier, it was already happening in silos, and we're just trying to keep up with it. I mean, Sarah works for corporate finance. They have their own AI structure. Nancy in corporate marketing, they're down the path with their AI structure. We've got business units and divisions talking about it. So I think it's getting fun right now. It's just unbelievable, the organizational pull. I just would have never. This is my 9th company I've worked in. I've worked at companies like Sony, PepsiCo, GE, and I've never seen this level of engagement before. So you might be asking, so Rob, you said a lot of stuff, but how's the rubber hitting the road? I don't know what's going on with this here. So from a results standpoint, even where we're at right now, I mentioned we created the internal platform. So we've got about 40 AI assistants. We've got 2 agents. Some of these assistants are really critical. And a lot of them are based around our engineering design and engineering group. So one of them we just created for engineering standard operating procedures, whether it's safety, design, robotics, electrical, mechanical. So any engineer in the company can use the assistants to see any of the standard operating procedures that we have from around the company. We have AI assistant for within the functions. Another favorite one of mine as a recovering engineer is that we have an assistant that will help us find part numbers. So I don't know how many engineers in here, when you're designing a machine and you're looking for a bolt that basically it's a common bolt that you use for most of your common platforms. I give it 15 minutes. If I can't find the part number, that bolt now has another part number, right? So we have an AI assistant that will go out and find that. We just launched an AI training program with MIT They have an initiative called Horizon. So we're going to be kicking that off the pilot in about 3 weeks. So what's interesting about that AI training through MIT is that the content continuously evolves as the field changes. So you're not buying training that is going to be the same content today or in 3 months as it is today, because we know the field is going to change. We're obviously going to continue our work with Rockwell, but as of today, we have 101 use cases. And once we vetted all those, the opportunity is a little north of $30 million. So we're already seeing some of that in revenue recognition, primarily on our aftermarket side, where we're using Einstein and Agentforce. That's helping us to respond to our customers quicker, which means we're experiencing quicker revenue recognition. And internally right now, it's always a tough conversation about how do you measure efficiency, right? I think it's a little bit more difficult in the functions, but in the plants on the factory floor, it just basically comes down to throughput. So I think if anything right now, we've been experiencing a lot of cost avoidance, but I anticipate that we're going to start seeing some financials tied to improved throughput. I think what's holding that up right now is if we're doing a lot of work within engineering, and engineering is leveraging AI quite a bit, and they're getting efficient, but manufacturing's not, right? It's held up there at that wall. So we're currently working with our operations teams to really get them more efficient and then kind of unplug that value stream, if you will. So we'll start to see that flow coming through. So sitting back now as we're talking and thinking about, we started this in September of 23 and where we're at now, and from a financial standpoint, what we've managed to achieve, it's pretty exciting. The great thing outside of paying for the Salesforce, Einstein, and Agentforce, and then recently with the AI training, we haven't spent any money doing this. I mean, we've used employees' time, 3 of us, and then obviously each of the functions and the divisions and BUs that are creating, their AI structures, if you will. It's time, but we haven't put a lot of money into this, and we've got these type of results. So, anything else to add?
Yeah, I think I said it many times, but for me, the big part of all this is really the human dimension and the change management part. This is when our customers struggle, they always struggle with that, the evolution of roles. And you were mentioning silos, and that made me think that, like a lot of adoption of new technology with AI, it starts with experimentation. You have some people experimenting, and very often experimentation happens in silo. And in the normal speed of change, things get organized, corporate functions take over. But we are in a world with AI that is going so fast, and even too fast sometimes, that any norm of the organization to absorb change at this speed is broken. And really, the idea of putting some structure how do you enable experimentation on one hand, but transform experimentation into something that scale, that's as important as a technology investment by yourself, because this is what will make what you build resilient and value producing over the cycles that it's expected to live. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation to any of you that are starting to go down this path is make sure you start with a defined architecture, a framework that fits your organization. Again, we started with 2 pillars, more internal focus, and then more customer external focused. And then, make sure you're creating that ecosystem where, we chose to build and also buy. And we did that again. When we build, we've got control and we've got speed. And when we purchase, we've got speed and scale as well. So that kind of closes that loop on that ecosystem of control, speed, and scale. So we have 17 seconds. So I guess one question. Come on, there's got to be one question.
It's going to be a super quick one, like 15 seconds.
So it's just simply an internal pillar, which is focused internally. So again, we use our internal platform our web application, Paris. So we create our own assistants and our own agents. And we have an agent right now that's able to, it connects to machine PLC, and it's able to help troubleshoot. So field technicians in the field could use that. And then the external is just what we talked about with putting intelligence on machines, whether we sell that intelligence in the price of the machine or we offer it as a, say, an annual subscription.
All right, everyone, please give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
For a great talk.
Thank you.